I got into land investing for the time freedom. I didn't get into it to become a multi-millionaire in real estate investing. However, it's led to that because it's very easy to use leverage for it.
This is the Yield Coach Show, episode 44. Hey everybody, this is your coach Ian Brown. A few announcements. Yield Coach Capital has opened its doors to investors looking to multiply their money while working with yours truly and our varsity investment team. We recently closed our 170-acre Gainesville, Florida industrial tract, and our limited partner investors are on pace to make 2.5 times or more on their money. That opportunity is gone, but don't miss the next one. Be sure to join our investor list and never miss a deal again. You can join our investor list by the portal, which is in the show notes of this podcast. It's in our Instagram bio link, and you can also do it at yield-coach.com. If you join our investor list, we will get you the free gift, 107 questions to ask a deal sponsor, and a discount to our employee to entrepreneur video course, which is packed full of information and case studies to kickstart your investment success. Now is your time to take the field. I'm your host, Ian Brown. Every episode, we bring you dynamic entrepreneurs, real estate investors, thought leaders, and inspirational guests ready to open up, share their story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you can learn lessons, gain advantages, and accelerate your own success. Very excited today. We have Mr. Brent Bowers. Brent Bowers is an Army officer turned investor. He focuses on buying and selling vacant land. He started investing to get his time and family and freedom back. And that was over 16 years ago. Now he's done 355 plus parcels of land, and he invests passively in notes. We'll talk about that. He's also growing a community to show him how it's done. Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ian. I love the name of the show, the Yield Coach Show. I mean, we have a land buyer right now. They got about $2,300 behind in their payments. And we had them at a 72-month payment plan. That's 5 years, right? What? 6 years. 6 years.
6 on 72. Yep.
Sorry, I can't do math. Obviously, I barely graduated high school.
It's not even lunch yet. I'm still holding coffee. We'll get there.
Yeah, maybe I just need another coffee. My assistant said, "Hey, Brent, what do? We need to lower the payment. It's like $800 a month." I was like, "Well, bounce that thing out," because we're charging 9% interest. I was like, extend that thing to 360 months. We're not going to charge them a refi fee or anything like that. But by doing that, it's going to get us an additional $70,000 in interest. Now, that's if they pay 30 years. I love yield.
Well, I'm glad you like the name of the show. I can't even remember now. Sam's our producer. She's watching, but she might text me some of the other names I had. They were all taken, like all the URLs. But I thank you. I do think I like the Yield Coach. I was like, okay. And I don't know about you. Just grew up 3-sport athlete, always playing sports. I have 3 little brothers. Everything was rough and tumble. Never wanted to be in the classroom. Always wanted to be on the field. So I was like, you know what? Let's just marry the two. Let's have some fun. A little bit of a retro vibe with our branding. But thank you. Well, I think we've had a couple. You're not our first guest that's kind of like military turned investor, or maybe you are still active military, but tell us about, let's go back to this military life, kind of what took you into the military, and ultimately what kind of, if it didn't bring you out, what's got you into this full-time investing and coaching you have now.
Yeah, I'm no longer active. I've been out since about 2018. I haven't had a real job since 2018. And so what brought me into the military was failure. I'm listening to a great book on Audible right now called Go for No. Amazing book, by the way. But I failed. I failed in 2008 and 2009 in the real estate industry. I threw in the towel. I went from having my lawn business. I was mowing grass. I started that business in like 5th grade, literally borrowed the neighbor's lawnmower and used it to mow other people's lawns with it. Built that up pretty good. Then got a real estate license in 2007, bought my first rental property in 2007, got married in 2007, and then became pretty much homeless in 2008 because I wasn't doing very many real estate deals. It was a tough time in that business for a lot of people. And I got it between my 2 ears that if they can't make it, how can I? So I was like, I'm going to go back to school. How do I afford that? And the military was the only way. So I tried to join the Air Force. They wouldn't take me. Luckily, the Air Force recruiter was kind enough to say, listen, go next door to the Army. They'll pretty much take anybody. And I said, okay, I'm coachable. Did a couple back-to-back combat deployments, lived in Germany for a couple years. Got back to the United States in 2013 because they were sending me to college. Finally, I was getting that dream. And I had that real estate itch. So I got back into real estate 2013, 2014, and then stumbled on land about 2016 and started making my exodus out of the military because I was preparing for combat deployment number 3, always gone, always away, always training. My first marriage failed, ended up in divorce. I'm now on my marriage number 2. We just had our first baby in 2016.
Congratulations.
And I had a huge, thank you. I had a huge why when that baby came out. Our first son. And I was like, I've got to get out of the military. I want to be around for this. And I started, just relentlessly searching for answers, listening to the 4-Hour Workweek in my car, listening to podcasts, just like the Yield Coach show, and found land investing.
That's an amazing journey. Now, maybe this is too personal, but was it your absence that was, hard on the first marriage? And I know part of your bio, you talked about getting your time back, your freedom back, your time with your family. I'm just curious. Absolutely.
100%. I'm sure there was a lot of other mistakes that were made as well. But, my first 4-year enlistment, I was newly married when I joined basic training. So in 4 years' time, I really only slept in my own personal bed about one of those years, 12 months out of 48 months. So yeah, absence was pretty tough.
Yeah, I definitely identify with, not the military side, but just, I don't know how personally how I could keep I have 3 children, and I did remarry. I was married a little bit young, had my now 17-year-old daughter, and then I remarried my wife, Lauren, who I met in law school. We met, 13 years ago, and then we've been married over 5, and we have 2 children. And it's like this second time through it all is like, so I have so much better sight, and I know that if I'm gone, and I do pass on some business opportunities just because I want to make sure no matter what, I have the priority of family and time with the kids and travel within reason. I can't be gone all the time, but, and it makes a huge difference. These kids they're 2 and 4, they're about to be, 3 and 5. And, I heard some stat, like 80% of your time with your kids is like before they're 12. And even if that's a little bit wrong, it sounds about right. Cause my 17-year-old has a driver's license and a part-time job, and I hardly ever see her. So I tend to think it's true. And so I just don't want to, I don't want to miss these early times. And I think we wrestle with it as investors. It's like, here we are, how to do it. I know how to do it. We kind of have different sectors, but it's still real estate and investment. And it's like, how much time do you want to put into this, this real estate engine, versus time with your family? And I think what I've decided is that it's kind of like working out. Everyone says, I don't have time. It's not so much you don't have time, it's about prioritization. So it's like, we all have the 24 hours. The question is like, how much are you going to prioritize family, work, workout, leisure, travel, whatever? So I really think it's just a matter of like just stacking what you prioritize. It's not so much time. And then the other thing that I've come to realize, in my wise old 41 years is try to make, to say it plainly, I try to make like power moves. That sounds kind of slang, but like, don't waste your time with like a bunch of little quarter measures, half measures, what ifs. Like, try to be decisive, take meaningful action. I'm not saying you have to 10x everything in your life necessarily, but my point is like, you think you don't have time, but if you took all these BS sticky notes that are hanging around your desk and a million things in your Google Calendar, I'll look at that sometimes and just throw like 70% of them into the trash. And then I'll look at my Google Calendar and I'll be like, what really matters? Sometimes I'll look at the whole month. I'm like, what really matters this month? And it might only be like a handful of things that matter for the whole month. And I'll be like, how about just crush those things? Because that's going to move the needle. All this other stuff is just like distraction, and it's pulling from family time. I'll stop there, but it's just kind of where my head's
I love
at.
that. I just wrote down make power moves. I talk about rhino power because, I'm a wholesaling Inc. coach. We're Rhino Nation. I got a rhino on the wall behind me.
Nice.
Rhino power. But yeah, making power moves. And that's so good. You know what is not a power move? Like for anybody listening to this, it is, for me, this is my opinion, is reading and replying to emails. Garbage. Like that's not a power move unless I'm like trying to do a closing and I got to go check that specific email. Like if you email me, I probably am going to miss it. I got to specifically search for your email. So I'm glad you reminded me of those power moves. And we're always out of balance. We're always out of balance. I got into land investing for the time freedom. I didn't get into it to become a multimillionaire in real estate investing. However, it's led to that because it's very easy to use leverage for it. Mm-hmm. So, and we could talk about that today.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. Let's talk, because we've had not every asset class on the show, but a lot of them, and different stories and different approaches. Let's talk about land, why you like land. I know it's going to also lead into some of this note investing, which is its own little niche. But yeah, let's talk about how you got into land, because some people are like, oh, land, I can't get any cash flow, and land, it takes forever, and land, blah, blah, blah. What about the environmental? What about the entitlement? So let's talk about why you love the dirt and how it's been good to you.
Yeah, dirt is clean. Like my dad said, it's just clean. There's nothing to it. I've done a lot of houses. I bought a lot of stinky, nasty, dirty cat pee houses. I used to take my 1-year-old into these dilapidated trailers that he's probably going to have him and I both are probably gonna have some breathing issues one day. But here's the thing, in 2016, when I heard that guy on the podcast, and I had just finished listening to the 4-Hour Workweek for like the second time on Audible. I listened to it on like 1.5x. And I was learning about virtual assistants and how I can leverage, because I was working 12, 13 hours a day for the Army and preparing for the 3rd combat deployment. And I just didn't have much time. So I had the time block. I was getting up at 4 a.m. every morning to work on my business. I heard this, and what I was doing then was I was trying to wholesale houses. I would send a bunch of postcards out. I would spend a ton of money. I would literally, money I didn't have, I'd put it on Amex and Capital One, and then get phone ringing, and I wouldn't take the phone calls because I'd be in like work or in the Army or in the field. And I heard this guy talk about flipping vacant raw parcels of land, and he's doubling his money overnight. And I was like, okay, I've never heard anybody doing this. Like, I come from Okeechobee, Florida. It's a small cattle town. Main driver of income is cattle. And I know one thing about cattle is they move in herds and they all get slaughtered at the same time. So if you're following the herd mentality, you're going to go off the cliff with the herd. So I was like, wait a minute, everyone's going after houses. At least my reticular activator told me that, because that's what I was focused on. And HGTV made it sexy. But land, you said it, Ian, like no one realizes. Like there's like, well, it's slow. There's nothing to it. Like there's no buildings on it to rent out or to renovate and flip like they do on those shows, HGTV. There's no way to make money or cash flow. Well, here's the thing. If you buy the land for massive discount and you turn around and sell it to someone else for a little bit more, or you just buy the land and turn around and sell it for a little bit more, there's a way to profit from it immediately. My first land deal was $285. I flipped it to a realtor for $5,000, literally like the next week.
Nice. Yeah, and I agree. I want to, obviously let you run this particular narrative, but it's like land has been really good to me. So I don't want. I think I know where you're going with some of this, and I don't want to just. I'll save my little tales for later. But like so you get this $285 parcel land, which congratulations, by the way. You flip it right away. How do you like to? You don't have to give away all your trade secrets, but I mean, how do you like to prospect for land? Because it is a little, in my opinion, it's a little different than prospecting necessarily for other assets. You don't have a mailbox on the property. You can't go smile and knock. Are there any techniques you'd like to share?
Yeah, and Ian, I am here to give it all away. I will answer anything, give you all my systems. That's what I'm here to do. I pray that someone listening to the Yield Coach show today can get this, the instruction, and they go take an action, and they can, get basically a result from that, which is money in their bank account or whatever, do a land deal. The second land deal I bought for $500, and I thought it was worthless. I totally thought the land was worthless because I couldn't get to it. It was landlocked. So I just went and took some photos. Yes, I did trespass to get to it. It was on a state park. All I had to do was get the photos, and then I put it on Craigslist. I disclosed that it's landlocked. You're going to need an ingress egress attorney. I didn't have money for an attorney back then, so I wasn't even going to go. I wasn't even like, I was afraid to call an attorney because I was like, this will cost me like something. Because I mean, I heard you say you go to law school. Like me, in my mind, I'm like, how did they charge me? Like, I don't even want to call them.
Right.
So I just disclosed it. That very next day, I had a buyer with $500 down. So remember, I paid $500 for the land. I got my money back out of the land, and $400 a month. That is the one that hooked me. That was my paradigm shift that Stephen Covey talks about, because now my truck payment was being paid. And I did a couple more of those, and I told my wife, Emily, I was like, listen, we do 10 more of these, we are financially free. We have that. We will have roughly $4,500 a month coming in. And that was my bills back then in 2016. Yeah. But how do I prospect for the land? Like, let me break it down. You want me to just share the steps?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So back then it was a whole lot different than what I do now and what I teach now. Like, I made a bunch of mistakes. Like, it was a slow, painful way to growth. Like, you can grow a lot faster. I have sharks in the land sharks community that they did $800,000 in the last 12 months. I didn't start that way. It took me many years to get through all these mistakes. But now how I find land is, we start out exactly like this. Let's just say that I'm in Florida, or I want to start out. Like, where do I get started, Brent? So the recommendation that I have is go directly to Redfin. If you're in Florida, let's just say you're in Orlando, Florida. It is busy right now in Orlando, Florida. So put in Orlando, Florida and Redfin, then go to the filters tab in the top right-hand corner, and you click on that and you click solds, because we want to see what land is selling, because I'm looking for demand. Then you go down to land, select land only, and then scroll down a little bit more. Now, if you're in Florida, you probably only want to look at the past 7 days, but let's just say you're in like Cleveland, Ohio. Then look at the last 3 months, and then go back to the map area where you put in Cleveland, Ohio, or Orlando, Florida, wherever you chose. Like, I like to do it in my own backyard and then expand from there, because there's this book called Acres of Diamonds. The guy literally sold his acres of diamonds to go into a far country, and he had the gold right there behind him. So sometimes there's gold in our own backyard. So now we're looking at the map after we've X'd out Orlando, Florida, or Cleveland, Ohio, and we're looking at the map, and I want to scroll out a little bit. I want to zoom out a little bit, hit that negative button to zoom out. And I'm looking for clusters of solds, the red dots on Redfin. If you like Zillow, it's yellow dots. And what I'm looking for is those cluster patterns, because right there, that's telling me there's demand in that area. Maybe you're not seeing demand in 1 week, then go to 6 months, look for little pockets of sold. And once you click on all of those solds, you're going to find out a couple things. What size parcels in demand, what size parcels trading and selling, what they're going for. Then you can kind of figure out, okay, I'm going to look at all the half acres. I'm going to add them all up. So let's say there's 10 of them. I'm going to add up what they sold for and divide it by 10. That's going to tell me what the average price a half acre lot sold for. And then there's one more thing I'm looking for. As you scroll down, you're going to see listed by or bought by. Now, if you don't see that, it just means that they didn't use a real estate agent. But that listed by is a listing agent, and the bought by is a buyer agent. Those are your land sales specialist realtors. Those are going to be pure gold to you. If you see like, okay, Ian Brown, he's the guy selling all the land in Cleveland, Ohio. He knows those areas like the back of his hand. So that's the first step. You've picked your market now. That's where the demand's at. Step number 2, go to a list puller or a list provider like PropStream, or, I don't know. PropStream is the one I use, so that's one I recommend. And then draw on the map of PropStream that exact area, that exact neighborhood. You can't get too micro in real estate. You draw with that line, and you're selecting that area. And if you know the size parcel that is in the most demand, let's just say it's half acre lots, 9 out of 10 of them were half acre lots. You just want to pull every landowner that owns a half acre lot in that neighborhood and send them some type of letter. The easiest letter is a postcard, but here's the thing. You're either going to do the work in the front end or the work in the back end. I am finding the best results right now with what we call our land offer letter. We are triple split testing this against postcards, against checks, against neutral letters. And this land offer letter is working by far the best that I'm seeing all over the country. And I'll give it to the Yield Coach Show audience today. If they go to thelandsharks.com/LOL, that's land offer letter. And that's the exact agreement I'm sending out. And these people will sign it and send it back. Because here's the thing, marketing, we're looking to attract the people we want to work with and detract the people that want a big bag of money for their land. We don't want to work with those guys. Don't waste my time. I have a Land Sharks community member in Korea. He's like, Brent, I can't take phone calls. I'm in the military. I've got an active duty command. I'm a commander of a battery, or no, I don't know. Anyhow, I have 128 soldiers. I can't take phone calls. I was like, bro, then take the phone number off the purchase agreement. 3 weeks later, he calls me and says, it's working. They're just signing it and sending it back. They're not even calling me.
Yeah, I do. I don't do much physical mail. I've done prospecting and cold calling, and we don't need to focus on me. A lot of my stuff's just come through relationships, being 17 years in Northeast Florida. And I'm doing kind of niche commercial stuff. But it's not about me. I think like the guys like you, split testing, getting really focused. The 4-hour work week, you mentioned that earlier. It's like people that are, systems and VAs and kind of like waterfalling responsibilities. So you don't just inundate yourself. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, so I'll be quick. I put maybe 1,000 letters out, which isn't like a ton, but all Jacksonville Beaches area. And I just wanted multifamily near the ocean. I already had 7 Airbnbs down there. I was trying to find maybe somebody's got a duplex, triplex, quads, and I put out my letters, and I didn't really think through. So just me and one, it's Sam. So me and Sam, we just run as a 2-person team. And I went out of town like right as the letters were hitting. I just hadn't even thought about exactly when somebody would be opening the mail, because we didn't direct send them, So we did a Ballpoint. I don't know if you ever tried Ballpoint, but we were trying out, a new mailer, and we got some hits, but you need to be on those people right away. I had a phone number on there that I really wasn't there to answer. And so I'm calling people, like 3 and 4 days later, and that's just not the way to do it. So, and I'm sure it's not the way you do it.
Yeah, I found that it was hot. Like that's extreme high competition, multifamily near the water, Northeast Florida, land. I've gotten a bunch of these back. When I was first starting out, I got I think I got like 12 or 13 back at one time signed.
Oh,
and I was so overwhelmed with it. I remember the desk. I remember the exact house, the exact room I was in. I stuck them all on the desk. I was like, I'll come back to this tomorrow. And then I did. I don't think it was the next day. It was like a couple of days later when the anxiety went away. Because like I'm thinking like, oh my God, these people are going to sell to somebody else. It's like they're not going to be around anymore, but I don't know where to start. So I laid all 12 of them out. It was actually the spare bedroom. I laid them all on the queen size bed. And I just one by one, I figured out what the land was worth by going to Zillow and Redfin about what I thought it was worth. And I wrote on the paper, okay, it's worth about 30,000. I just got it under contract for 11. This one's worth about 8,000. I just got it under contract for 6,000. And what I did was I started with one of those 12, and I went with the one that had the bigger spread. The one that was worth 39,000, and I got it under contract for 7,000. And I started with that one, and some of them actually did sell to other people. It was like two out of 12. By the time I got to it, and it was like a couple months later, I just did one by one, and I literally got it sold and got paid. And then I went to the next one because I was just like, baby stepping it, because I didn't know what I was doing. That was the problem.
That's smart. So you literally got 12 come back. You go to the highest margin. You actually buy and sell that one before going into the next deal. You just waterfalled right down all your signed offers.
Yeah. Anytime I do too many things at once, nothing gets done. Yeah. Nothing whatsoever. It's like, I look at my emails and there's like a bunch of them in there to read. I'm like, okay, I'll try again later, which what I should do is maybe just start with the first one. But I see that all those emails or all those texts, like I get overwhelmed.
Yeah. I think that's good advice, guys. Cause when you do mass marketing, even if it's like, laser, not shotgun. And even if you got like a half dozen meaningful leads back and you don't have much of a system, that's going to overwhelm you. I mean, put 6 properties on your calendar to go quickly analyze and write offers on, and your eyes are going to cross in a hurry, and then you're going to start freaking out about, how do I fund 6 of these at once? I mean, so yeah, I mean, and I don't, maybe it's because of my like commercial real estate background, but I am not accustomed to like fire drill fast pace, because I'm just used to deals that are like real strategic, lots of underwriting time, 30 days minimum due diligence, oftentimes more. And so it's like, I hear some of these stories about, like guys getting a dozen wholesale deals under contract at once. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know what that would feel like.
Yeah. Do you see these gray hairs in my beard? Like, that's when I'm trying to do too much. Like, I actually have a piece of commercial land for sale right now. We got a letter of intent. Like the first week we put it on the MLS, and they asked for 120 days due diligence. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What in the world? But that's commercial. Like,
yeah.
I'm used to residential where it's like 1 week and they buy the thing, so I'm getting a little used to that, but it's a smoking hot deal. The sellers are giving me 6 months to buy the land. I haven't even bought it yet, and they're allowing me to market it. He's also going to seller finance it to me for 15 years at 5% interest. And my buyer, I'm offering 30 years financing at 12% interest. And the down payment's going to cover the down payment. The down payment from my buyer will cover the down payment to my seller. Mm-hmm. So it's a positive arbitrage. I'll be profitable day one and forever on the down payment, on the monthly payments. So because I'm getting $2,200 a month, I'm paying my buyer. I'm sorry, my buyer's paying me $2,200 a month. I'm paying my seller $1,100 a month, and I'm adding about $100,000 on top of because I'm buying it for $150. I'm selling it for $239.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think, and that was pretty straightforward. I think the audience can follow that, and people, so that's a good example. So that's an example of, Brent's letting you know how you can turn land into cash flow, where a lot of people are like, well, all I'm going to have is, a tax bill, maybe a landscaping bill, or at least chopping it down, once or twice. In Florida, it's going to have to be more than once a year. I mean, you can get waist high grass out of like an asphalt parking lot in Florida with all the rain and sun we get. But yeah, the next thing you know, you got municipal liens and that nearly free property is not so free anymore. But I think so. What Brent just told everybody is, he just is, well, not only is there $100,000 upside or more, but over $1,000 a month, you've got to. I mean, a lot of people will buy rental homes, which is not my forte, but a lot of people buy rental homes. And, they're shooting for a couple $100 a month per property, or, per unit if it's multi-unit. I mean, you have no obligation. You're sitting back as you're really the mortgagee. You're sitting back as the bank. You're really like seller financing this guy. And it's a beautiful thing. And now you got over $1,000 a month and $100,000 upside, plenty of money in the bank if you ever had to foreclose on them. And there are some things that are probably not the topic of this podcast, but I mean, some people do, depending on the state you're in. You could be in a deed of trust state and your foreclosure risk goes way down because you can foreclose so quickly. Bear in mind, these are not like owner occupied properties. So even some of like the COVID relief stuff that's dwindling, but if you were still concerned about it, if it's a vacant piece of property, obviously less of a concern. And then you can do prepackaged deed in lieu where, if somebody gets behind under the agreement, you can fast track a foreclosure. So the reason why this is on my mind is I bought and sold a piece, kind of like you, Brent. I bought it really quickly, cash, and I put it on I cut the grass, cleaned out. It had 5 dwellings on it, all vacant, and it was 1.5 acres. And I bought it because it was zoned for multifamily and had excess land. So you could do like 20. If you had a good engineer, you could probably get like 24 units on it to 28 units. But either way, you had 5 dwellings and some excess land. So I bought it $100,000, and then I cleaned it up, knocked down the grass, trashed out the houses, put it, flew a drone, got some good images, did my due diligence, like you were kind of complaining about with the commercial guys. Did my soil, did my environmental. I got an Alta, got my wetland delineation. So yeah, it did take 6 weeks and $12,000 in due diligence, which was like a steal. But then I could take that whole package, put it up on Crexy and LoopNet and CoStar and MLS and everything in between, and ended up getting a buyer, and I seller financed the buyer because I was like, man, I've only owned this thing like 8 weeks. And so I'm like, I don't want to get, what slapped with the short-term game. So I ended up,
Whatever. Just buy a building and depreciate it.
but here's the deal. I was like, you know what? I'll just seller finance this guy. And so I ended up doing seller financing for 2 years, but he had to do 1 year payment. So there was a prepayment penalty equal to the tax hit if I was paid off inside of a year, but he had to pay it off by 24 months. And so, but to your point, his down payment was the majority of my original purchase price. And then inflows $1,100 a month. And there's $150,000 upside on the deal. But that has been, and I'm still in that. Actually, I'm due to be paid off probably like a month after this show airs. So we'll have to talk about that later. But anyways, it's the most passive deal I've ever done. I mean, just sitting back playing bank when you have a great down payment is a beautiful position to be in. I mean, I still own an 83 unit apartment in Georgia. Those are not passive deals. These land deals with seller financing or the arbitrage stuff, like you mentioned, I mean, it's about as passive as it gets.
Well, hopefully we can do a podcast swap, because I'd love to interview you on the Wholesaling Inc. podcast and break that deal down, because I have a very similar deal right now in Daytona Beach. I'm buying 5 acres really close to a Walmart, 24. It's already the city's saying, yes, you can put 24 units in it. And do exactly what that. It's probably going to be about 6 or 8 weeks. The survey is already 4 weeks out. We've already ordered it, even though we don't own the land yet. But I close on that one this Friday.
Nice. I think that'll be good for you, And if you're already, you're land shark and you got I don't know if they're also the sharks or the guppies, or if there's a graduation, but either way, they're out there hunting. The entitlement side is incredibly valuable. I sit on Jacksonville's planning commission, been doing that 4 years, just rezones and variances and administrative deviations and land use changes and PUDs. And for 4 years now, been hearing all those applications. And talk about creating value. Some of the stuff you're lettering and finding, for 10, 20, 30, 40, $100,000. I mean, you get it entitled for a 200 unit apartment complex, depending on where you are in Florida. Now you've got maybe a $2 million property. So it's, I think I like what you're doing.
The sky's the limit. I'll tell you, I don't do entitlements. I don't do very many. There's only, I'll pick one of those a year to play with. Most of the time I am just getting it for cheap and selling it for a little bit more on seller financing, preferably seller financing. Do they all work out that way? No. Sometimes they buy them cash. We got one that just closed for cash the other day, $13,000 net profit. But here's the thing, like those, those keep the wheels spinning. Those keep the electric on, because at the end of the day, again, I didn't get into this to get uber rich. I got into it to build lifestyle freedom through that passive income. We're going to Costa Rica at the end of June here for 6 weeks. Like, we took off almost all the month of March. Like, I am trying to do this to where it's lifestyle freedom, like that whole 4 hour work week dream type thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope people are hearing what Brent's saying, because a lot of people will buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. But what Brent's doing, and I assume what you're coaching here, with proper down payments, and it sounds like these down payments are generally covering your acquisition, probably. If they're not, they're probably pretty close, where you're not leaving much in the deal. And then now you've got a passive income stream. And when I first started investing, that's all I would think about, is like, okay, what's my monthly obligation? How much closer does this property get me to it on a monthly cash flow? Because net worth, you fill out your personal financial statement, and there's a lot. I mean, it's very subjective once you get beyond like cash, auto, jewelry. You start moving over into like your real estate holdings on your PFS, and you're like, well, I think this apartment's worth $5 million, but someone else might think it's worth 3.25. But you could have like $1 million swing in net worth. Like, it's easier than you think. And what I'm getting at is, like, with what Brent's talking about, there's nothing debatable about direct deposit or opening the auto checks and saying, okay, there's the $1,200 from this guy. Here's the $800 from that guy. Here's the $300 from that guy. Here's $2,200 from that guy. And you're just working towards that monthly nut that you're trying to cover. And that's what brought me into real estate in the first place. I was just trying to get time freedom back and replace income with real estate income that I didn't have to work very hard for. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah, it's just, it's just real basic stuff. We're buying a beautiful piece of land, an asset at a discount, and 99 out of 100 people, or let's just say 99% of people, aren't going to sell me their land at a crazy massive discount. But that 1 out of 100 that does, that 1% that does, that's where the deal comes. Like, a lot of people ask you, are these out-of-state owners and behind on taxes land? Yeah, some of it. Sometimes they live in the same city that they're selling us the land, and they're not behind on taxes. They're just aggravated, or they're just done with it, or they're tired and worn out, or they inherited it from Uncle Bob, but they can't stand Uncle Bob. They could never stand Uncle Bob. He left them a piece of land and they want to get rid of it as fast as possible. And they don't care what they make on it. They don't care if they make anything on it. They're unattached. They're not like homeowners that have emotionally attached to this house and raised all their children in this house.
That's probably my favorite part about doing, let's call it non-residential, or not, at least non-owner occupied residential. I'll do multifamily, commercial, I'll do land. I don't want to take too much of your time. We closed 170 acres outside of Gainesville. It's all zoned industrial. We closed, 5 weeks ago at the time of this recording. It'll be a little bit longer when this airs. 75% seller financing, 5%. First 2 years are interest only, and we had to raise $1 million in limited partner equity, and we did a full 506C syndication for the LP equity. Seller financed the rest. 170 acres for 1.5 million, and it comps out over 10 million. And it's probably going to end up being, knock on wood, I mean, it comps out at probably the best single deal that I've done to date. Now, it's going to take us probably 3 to 5 years to cycle through this deal. But I thought my apartments were the best I'd done, and I just closed this thing like this year. We just closed 5 weeks ago. And so it's a good timing for you to be on the show, because I'm high flying on land right now.
Wow. I love that deal. Yeah. And 3 to 5 years for some people, they might be thinking, I don't have time for that. But you stack up one of those every 5 years and do a bunch of small ones like I do. It all work together. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And we just, and then just to, let's say, like in my deal, we just made sure we raised enough LP equity to cover a full 5-year hold. So you just need to be careful about modeling. This is a lot of land. So we had to model like timbering and some engineering, and we had to model, obviously your property taxes, we're carrying liability insurance, patching up some fences. But it's actually, but we just made sure we raise enough money to where if we have no cash flow, we're still covered. And when you buy for $9,000 an acre and you got comps over $100,000 an acre, life is not too bad. So, but like I said, they're not all big. I did that little one that we talked about, so, and I did that one alone. I mean, the big thing, and I think Brent, you would agree, the land is not as heavily pursued generally. Like, you might have like a guy who does, I build self-storage, or I build townhouses, or I build whatever. And they're just looking for that piece for their use on almost like an a la carte basis. And they might call brokers, or they're probably not even sending out letters. They're probably not cold calling. Then you got guys like yourself that are just hitting land within a certain geography where there's demand. And these owners, they are not used to getting your correspondence.
No. And here's the thing, like, I hit every once in a while in a high demand area like Florida, they'll say, yeah, I get these letters all the time. Awesome. Have you spoken to anybody else? And most of the time, like 9 out of 10 is, no, actually, you're the first person who's actually called me back. But most of the time they don't even call. Sometimes they just sign it and say, like, I bought a piece of land in Vero Beach, Florida, last week. I never even spoken to the seller. Like, he literally signed it and sent it back, and via email. So I have a very specific email it goes to. And I replied back to him. He actually wanted something changed on it. He wanted his email address changed, and he wanted the property identification number added. I was like, okay. So I redid it on DocuSign, sent it, and he signed it.
Well, I think that it's, it's nice. You're going to share your, I'm going to say it wrong here, your offer letter, your land offer letter. And, you can share that with us, as we wrap up. But, what's interesting is, just sounds like you're actually putting out like a binding or a bindable agreement in the mail. Is that true?
Exactly.
Okay. And so I think
Yes.
that, a lot of people are just sending out a picture of them like in their dog or a picture of them like holding their child or
Mhm.
or whatever human capital they're gonna burn up in their mailers. But and it's usually a call to action like we're buying in your area, we want to buy your property, but it doesn't actually it's not something that could be signed and returned and be an offer. So
Yeah.
no, that's great. Okay.
And here's the thing. It's like, just, I encourage people to talk to a real estate attorney in your area. Maybe you're going to do this in Nebraska. Make sure what you're sending out is okay. Like, we do some things like I don't sign them as the buyer. That way I'm not bound to it. And every real estate attorney is probably going to tell you something a little different. You can change it up and edit it a little bit as well. We edit it for certain areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, another one we send out, if they sign it in a certain part of Florida, I can put it right on the MLS. And I tell the seller what's going on because I don't want them to like be shocked, be like, wait a minute, what do you mean you're putting my land on the MLS? I thought you were the buyer. No, we're actually going to find a buyer.
Yeah. So what percentage are you typically straight wholesaling versus those that you like close and take title and do something else?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you the percentage in my mind that I want. I try and do 90% to where I buy it with either seller financing terms where the seller does a carryback for me, or I borrow money from my father-in-law. We pay him 9% interest. I just met an insurance broker. He wants to loan me some money to buy land because he's like, I'm taking all my money out of the stock market because I just took a huge dive, which is probably the worst time to take money out of the stock market. But he's like, I'm not putting any more in. I want it secured by land, and I know you're buying this land at like 50 cents on the dollar. So he's, as a lender, going to be in a perfect position. So 90% is what I shoot for, Ian. Does it always happen? No. It's like 50% of these I'm assigning the contract, or basically I'm getting the land under contract and assigning it to a builder or a buyer. Probably the other 40% I'm seller financing, and the other 10% I'm just buying with cash or other people's money and flipping it on the MLS. Now, I always say that there's seller financing available, but they have to come up with a pretty decent down payment because, anytime I find that I take less than $5,000 or $6,000 down, I eventually have to take the land back.
Yeah. You definitely want to have enough to cover the administrative and procedural part. And if you, God forbid, you have to foreclose or something, for sure. Okay. We can maybe talk about this afterwards or off air about, considering different mechanisms and like prepackaged deed in lieu and things like that.
I love that.
God, I had another thought and I think it evaded me. That's okay. Oh, another reason why I like your approach is I've just seen it happen. Land is like one of the least desired asset classes for banks to lend on when there's no proposed construction. So if I go to a bank and I'm like, I want to put a mini storage on these 5 acres, that's probably bankable, especially if I have, construction budget and pro forma and all that stuff. If I just say, I want these 5 acres, they're zoned for me to one day do mini storage, banks aren't going to love that. I'll be lucky to get 50% loan to value, lucky, especially like today, at the time of this recording. So what you're doing is you're offering leverage, obviously at your new revised price, but you're offering leverage in an asset class that is traditionally difficult to bank. And I think is also traditionally more open to seller financing, because people are like, oh, you got seller financing on 170 industrial acres outside of Gainesville. How'd you do that? It's a land deal. It was in the same family for generations. They're just happy to take land that had a couple cows on it and a tax bill and start receiving $6,000 a month. I mean,
and they can leave their cows on it. You keep it.
Keep the ag exemption. Yeah, exactly.
Benefit of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
So you bringing, or if somebody's listening to this that wants to try to do this or be in your Shark program, it's like by providing leverage to an asset class that is traditionally hard to bank and traditionally low leverage, you are creating opportunity.
I'm becoming the bank, and as well as the sellers of this land, like you said it in Gainesville. Like a bank's not gonna lend on that. So what did your sellers have to do? They had to offer that financing because most people aren't walking around with 1.2 million, 1.5
that
million.
deal was 1.5. They financed 1.125. They financed 75% of it.
Holy cow. And I got a similar deal I did in Colorado Springs. It's on 4 4-lane highway, Academy Boulevard. It backs up to the golf course. This one's only 3 acres. We're still friends with the seller, by the way. My acquisition manager, Jen, was just speaking with him, but he sold us the land for $1.2 million. We can put 34 townhomes on it. We're moving forward with that building. He sold it to us for $1.2 million. And I don't want anybody thinking, oh my God, I don't have $1.2 million. I started with a $285 deal, and then the next one was $500. The next one was $1,300. And I just kept moving up because I had no confidence back then. I was broke. Even though I was an Army officer, I should have had a ton of confidence. But this seller sold us the land for $1.2 million. He gave us like 2 months to come up with $600,000. So what did we do? we had some cash buyers. I started a real estate meetup out there in Colorado Springs. We pooled the money. So we got $600,000 pulled together with, like you said, the 503C, which actually we did that and then created it because we realized we broke some rules. So we kind of had to reverse and fix all that. But we had 1 year to pay the remaining $600,000, 0% interest, 0 payments. And we did it. We did it with all private funds. There's no debt on it. And we're about to break ground.
Awesome. Congratulations. I think since we've been talking about deals so much, usually I have the Coach Brown break down. And we go through a deal, find, fund, fix, exit, biggest lesson. I mean, you've rattled off a few already. So do you have a deal you'd want to just chop through quickly? We usually say, how'd you find it? How'd you fund it? How'd you fix it? Now it's land, so you may not have made it a physical improvement. Exit and lesson. So find, fund, fix, exit, lesson. You want to try to rip into one?
I'll talk about a recent one. I was looking over at my board. It used to be on there. So we bought a piece of land out in Colorado for $40,000. It took about a year to buy it because we had to go through some probate issues. The sellers had some liens. But what's really cool is that year it took us to buy this, I had the cash sitting aside to buy it. And you know what happens with cash when you leave it in an account, like other opportunities come by and it gets sent. So we had a year also to market for our buyer. Well, we had a buyer ready, willing, and able with a $5,000 deposit down payment, and he put it in escrow. And basically, we closed on this land finally for $40,000. I didn't have the money. I was like, dadgummit, I spent it on something else. So I called father-in-law and was like, hey, I got a $40,000 land deal. We could pay 9% interest to you on it. You just tell me how soon you want to be paid off. He said 5 years is fine. So we're paying him $800 a month on a fully amortized 5-year loan for $40,000 at 9% interest. Well, my buyer, the day I closed on this deal, my father-in-law sent the money, so I didn't use any of my own cash to buy it. My buyer that same day already had a $5,000 earnest. So we took his earnest money deposit and gave him what's called a contract for deed. And we sold him the land for $90,000 at I think we're charging him 12% interest. So his payment to us is $946 a month. My father-in-law's payment is $800 a month. So my buyer will pay that piece of land off in 13 and a half years. I'll have my father-in-law paid off in 5 years.
Nice.
So I got $5,000 up front. I didn't give my father-in-law that money. I kept that. And then every month I keep about $146 difference, the delta, what some people call it. And then at the end, when my father-in-law's paid off in 60 months or 5 years, I keep the whole $946 a month. That deal, if he pays until the very end, we will make roughly $102,000. If we didn't give him a prepayment penalty, we probably should have. But if he does it, if he pays off tomorrow, I'll still make $50,000 on the deal with none of my own money.
Those are beautiful. You've said it consistently, so hopefully the audience is gripping it. But I mean, essentially what Brent's talking about is these are income plays from land. And how are they becoming income plays? Through seller financing. And some of it's assignments and contracts for deeds, but big picture, by seller financing, creating leverage in an asset class that doesn't usually have it. Because even a relatively inexpensive land deal is still a good chunk of change for someone to come up with. I mean, if I put a $100,000 acre out, or whatever it is, if it's commercial in Jacksonville, it's probably $500,000. It could be $1 million if it's in a good corner. And it's like, that's a lot of money. And if the bank's only going to give you like 40, 50, 60% loan to, you're not going to get 60 right now on without having a development plan. You're not going to get 60% LTV. And so like what I'm getting at is that people are eager to not have to put all of the money in to buy the land. They'll pay. I mean, it sounds like you're getting 12%. That's sportier than I would have thought, but that's great. The deal that I'm doing, it was before rates went crazy. When rates were still in the 3s, I got a 6. But by example, here you're getting 12s when rates are in the 6s. So I mean, there's definitely a delta there. All right, your biggest lesson on the deal you just described.
So everything worked out pretty well. I'd say I learned all the lessons very quickly, and that's another thing I'd say for people: make mistakes really quickly. Make them while you're young, make them while you can, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because I still make them. That deal's still working pretty well. He's still paying.
Yeah. Inaction's never going to do it. Action over inaction is what I was trying to say, and I've said it before. I'm not the first person to say it, but one of the most powerful words in the English dictionary is 2 letters: do, D-O. Get out there and go. Another 2-letter. Man, I'm on a roll. All right. I've got this last kind of quick bullet section where I say you call the play. So I didn't brace you on this, but it's just a series of kind of resource related questions. And if you don't have anything, that's fine. Just say next or pass. But your favorite real estate or business book?
The Wealthy Gardener.
That just came up recently. I'm going to jot that down. Add that to my Audible list. Wealthy Gardener. All right. Favorite personal development book?
Geez, I'm looking. Your World-Class Assistant. I'm just pulling the one off my bookshelf. This is one that gave me the confidence to hire an executive assistant. Oh my God. Best investment ever. Executive assistant. She's also one of my lenders now too. She's going to make $5,000 in interest this year on her money.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And if you're watching this, so he just held the book up for us there. Okay. And I know we both have podcasts, but other than ours, you got a favorite podcast or two that you tune into?
No, I used to listen to Bigger Pockets back in the day when they first started it, but I don't really listen to podcasts anymore.
We spend a lot of time making this one, and I try to check out my guests' podcasts if they do. And Brent does have a podcast. You want to tell everybody what it is?
The Wholesaling Inc. podcast, Wholesaling Inc.
Yeah,
INC Inc.
I don't mind spreading the love. I don't have that sinking life raft mentality. You know what I mean? There's room for all of us. So, all right. And then what is your best yield coach advice for eager entrepreneurs? Like your last nugget.
Man, I'm going to repeat what you said already, Ian. Go out and take action. It doesn't have to be massive, crazy, violent action. It could just be a small win each day. What's a small win? Pick your playground, pick your market, get some letters out, pick your area. You're probably going to hear so many great tips on this podcast. Write 1 or 2 sentences down and then time block it. Put some time in your schedule to do something within 24 hours and just keep that momentum, build that habit.
I like that. And I do think that nothing against the massive action type mindset. I mean, at times people are just stagnant, but if you haven't really started or you're not really getting a small incremental change is going to be plenty. You also don't need to like submarine your life accidentally by trying to take this 10x step when you don't have momentum yet. All right, we'll leave it at that. That's awesome.
It's like going to the gym and putting like 4 plates on each side of the bar and trying to squat it. You're going to break your dadgum back. Like, how about you just squat the bar?
Exactly. Step 1, go to the gym, like show up with a water bottle and a towel, can you make it 5 minutes? That was an old Atomic Habits thing. Like, he's got clients that are in peak physical condition and have lost like 100 pounds or more. And step 1 was like, just literally walk in the front door of the gym. You can sit down and leave right away and then incrementally do a little bit more. And it is amazing what can happen. All right. Lastly, Brent, where can people connect, learn more, dig into your community?
Yeah, go right now to thelandsharks.com, schedule a call, fill out that form. I can't take everybody. We do, seriously, I promise you, 100% reject some people. You got to fill out that form, be very specific. If you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, please don't even fill it out. But I'm looking to help people that want to change their life and build a business that can create time freedom. And if you want to look at some more information, get out of the info collecting and the I hate that word education mode, but if you want to stay in it, go to my TikTok channel, Brent L. Bowers 1. I do a TikTok video every day on how to make money in land.
Wow. I think you're our first guest that put a nice plug into his TikTok platform, and we have to check that out. All right. Thanks. Well, this has been awesome. You were a really good guest. And I hope the audience realizes land isn't just boring dirt. Dirt is clean, right, Brent? So
dirt is clean.
Get out there, start looking at land. I think one thing that I 100% agree with Brent on is these sellers are not as accustomed to being approached. They're also probably more open to seller financing. So just keep those two things in mind, and be creative. I don't want to get too far off course as we wrap up here, but land has a highest and best use, and it's often in flux. So think about rezoning and entitlement and what this land can be. What can it be used for? So land can also be great for the imaginative or creative investor. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, share it with a friend. Give us a subscribe. Give us a rate. We love it. Helps us bring you better and better content. If you're into the socials, we are Yield Coach on Insta, Facebook, and YouTube, and we frequently post our deal opportunities, bonus content, and inside peeks into our personal and professional pursuits. Well, that's a wrap on the show. And for now, this is Coach Brown signing off and reminding everyone to lace up and leave it all on the field. Yield Coach out.